In a fog-draped Georgian manor, Blackthorn Hall, a scream shatters the night. Clara Wentworth lies dead on a crimson velvet staircase, a silver letter opener in her heart. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, unravels a web of secrets, a hidden will, a forbidden affair, and a trail of embezzlement. As a second murder strikes, Poirot's little grey cells race against time to expose a cunning killer. Greed, betrayal, and deception collide in this chilling Agatha Christie-style mystery. Will the truth unravel before another life is lost? Chapter 1. The Invitation to Blackthorn Hall. The autumn fog draped London in a shroud of mystery, curling around the gaslit streets like a conspirator's whisper. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored overcoat, stepped from a hansom cab, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the damp. His moustache, a triumph of symmetry, quivered faintly as he inhaled the crisp air, scented with wet leaves and the faint tang of coal smoke. Before him stood Blackthorn Hall, a Georgian manor on the city's fringe, its tall windows aglow, and its ivy-wreathed stonework imposing under the twilight sky. The invitation, penned in Lady Beatrice Ashford's elegant hand, had been both urgent and vague. A summons to a weekend gathering, hinting at a matter requiring your singular discernment, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot's cane tapped a deliberate rhythm as he ascended the steps. The butler, a gaunt figure with eyes like polished flint, admitted him into a hall resplendent with opulence. A chandelier of glittering crystal cast prismatic light across walls panelled in dark oak, and a grand staircase, its steps swathed in rich crimson velvet, rose like a stage for some unseen drama. Poirot's sharp eyes noted every detail, the faint wear on the velvet's edge, the gleam of a silver candelabrum, the distant echo of voices from deeper within the house. Lady Beatrice awaited him in the drawing-room, a space of gilded mirrors and brocade upholstery. She was a woman of 60, her silver hair swept into a chignon, her bearing regal yet strained. Her emerald-green dress rustled as she rose, extending a hand gloved in lace. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low but firm, "your presence honours us. I fear we stand on the precipice of calamity." Her gaze flickered to the window, where the fog pressed against the panes. "My family is gathered here, and old wounds fester. I need your perception to prevent disaster." Poirot inclined his head, his mind already cataloguing her words. "Madame, you speak of danger, yet you are vague. Tell me, what is the nature of this calamity you fear?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her fingers tightening on a pearl-handled fan. "Rivalries," she said at last. "Suspicions. Secrets that could tear us apart." She would say no more, inviting him instead to meet the household at dinner. The dining room was a tableau of restrained tension. At the head of the mahogany table sat Lady Beatrice, her son Reginald Ashford to her right. Reginald, a man in his 30s with the polished charm of a seasoned rake, wore a tailored suit but carried the faint flush of too much brandy. His smile was easy, but his eyes darted restlessly. Across from him was Clara Wentworth, Lady Beatrice's niece, a journalist whose sharp features and sharper tongue had made her notorious. Her dark hair was pinned severely, and her gaze held a challenge as she surveyed the room. Mr. Harold Vance, the family solicitor, sat beside her, his thin lips pressed into a line, his fingers drumming softly on a leather portfolio. Miss Eleanor Gray, the young governess to Lady Beatrice's grandson, was a study in contrasts, her delicate beauty marred by nervous glances, her hands twisting a napkin. Dr. Simon Caldwell, a portly physician and family friend, completed the party, his laughter loud but brittle, as if masking some private unease. Dinner was a symphony of clinking crystal and forced civility. Poirot, seated beside Lady Beatrice, savoured his consommé while observing the undercurrents. Clara's barbed remark about Reginald's extravagant habits drew a flush to his cheeks and a sharp look from his mother. Mr. Vance deflected Clara's pointed questions about the family's investments with practiced blandness. Miss Grey, silent and less addressed, flinched when Dr. Caldwell's hand brushed hers while passing a dish. Poirot's little grey cells hummed. "The family," he murmured to himself, "is like a clock wound too tightly, ready to break." As dessert was served, a delicate lemon soufflé, the atmosphere grew heavier. Lady Beatrice rose, proposing a toast to harmony, but her voice faltered. Before she could finish, a scream, raw and piercing, tore through the house. Glasses clattered, chairs scraped back. Poirot, with surprising agility, led the rush to the hall. There, at the foot of the velvet-draped staircase, lay Clara Wentworth. Her body crumpled like a discarded marionette. Blood seeped from her chest, staining her ivory blouse and pooling on the polished floor. Beside her gleamed a silver letter opener, its handle etched with the Ashford crest, now slick with crimson. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, stared upward, as if accusing the very walls. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers hovering over the scene. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, his voice steady despite the horror. "The curtain has risen, and the tragedy, it is real." He stood, his gaze sweeping the shocked faces of the household, each a mask of grief-fear, or something less easily named. The game, Poirot knew, had begun, and he alone could unravel its deadly threads. Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The grand hall of Blackthorn Hall was a frozen tableau of horror. The crimson velvet of the staircase glowing like a wound under the chandelier's flickering light. Clara Wentworth's body lay sprawled at the base, her once vibrant eyes fixed in a glassy stare, her sheet ivory blouse marred by a spreading stain of blood. The silver letter opener, its Ashford crest glinting malevolently, rested inches from her outstretched hand, a silent testament to violence. Hercule Poirot, his compact form radiating calm amidst the chaos, knelt beside the corpse, his gloved fingers hovering with the precision of a surgeon. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood, and the stifled gasps of the assembled household. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice a soft counterpoint to the rising panic. "This is no accident, but a crime most deliberate." His sharp green eyes, like those of a watchful cat, scanned the scene. The velvet stairs, plush and unyielding, bore no trace of a struggle, no torn fabric, no scuffed edges, save for the blood pooling beneath Clara. Yet, at the top of the staircase, a single pearl earring, delicate and luminous, lay caught in the crimson pile, its presence a whisper of incongruity. Poirot's moustache twitched as he retrieved it with a handkerchief, slipping it into his pocket with a murmured "Curieux." The household stood in a ragged semicircle, their faces a gallery of shock and suspicion. Lady Beatrice Ashford, her silver hair slightly dishevelled, clutched her lace shawl, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Clara, my poor Clara." Reginald Ashford, his earlier charm replaced by a pallor that matched his linen shirt, gripped the banister, his knuckles white. Miss Eleanor Grey, the governess, stood apart, her delicate hands twisting a locket at her throat, her eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting another horror. Mr. Harold Vance, the solicitor, maintained a rigid composure, though his thin fingers betrayed a faint tremor as they adjusted his spectacles. Dr. Simon Caldwell, his joviality extinguished, knelt beside Poirot, his physician's instincts overcoming his shock. "She's gone," he said, his voice hollow. "A single stab to the heart. Death was swift." Poirot nodded, his gaze lingering on the letter opener. "This weapon," he said, "it is not one chosen by chance. It bears the mark of this house, does it not?" Lady Beatrice confirmed with a nod, her voice barely audible. "It was my husband's, kept in the study." Poirot's mind catalogued this detail. A family heirloom used to kill a family member suggested intimacy, intent, and audacity. The clatter of boots announced the arrival of Inspector Grayson, a burly man with a bristling moustache and a manner as blunt as his name. "What's all this, then?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing at the scene. "Looks like a robbery gone wrong. Some vagrant, perhaps, caught in the act." Poirot's lips curved into a faint, reproving smile. "No, Inspector. A thief does not select a silver letter opener when a knife would suffice. This is personal, calculated. Observe the body. There is no sign of a struggle, no defensive wounds. Clara Wentworth was taken by surprise, by someone she trusted." Grayson grunted, unconvinced, but deferred to Poirot's reputation. "Very well, Mr. Poirot. What do you suggest?" Poirot rose, brushing invisible dust from his immaculate trousers. "First, we preserve the scene. Then, we question. Each person here holds a piece of the puzzle, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall assemble it." The household was ushered to the drawing-room, where the fire's warmth did little to dispel the chill of suspicion. Poirot remained in the hall, his cane tapping a slow rhythm as he examined the staircase. The velvet was pristine, its deep pile muffling sound, yet the blood had seeped only at the base, suggesting Clara had fallen, or been placed after the fatal blow. The railing, polished to a mirror sheen, bore no smudges or scratches. Poirot ascended, his steps deliberate, pausing at the top where the pearl earring had lain. The carpet here was slightly disturbed. A single thread caught on the earring's clasp. "A clue," he mused, "but to what? A careless moment, or a deliberate misdirection?" Returning to the drawing-room, Poirot began his interrogations, his manner courteous but relentless. Reginald Ashford, lounging with forced nonchalance, claimed he had been in the billiard-room, practicing shots alone. "No one to vouch for you, monsieur?" Poirot asked, his tone mild. Reginald shrugged, his smile brittle. "Afraid not. I'm a solitary sort when it comes to billiards." Poirot noted the faint tremor in his voice, the way his eyes avoided the others. Lady Beatrice, seated like a queen on her velvet chair, said she had been in her study, writing letters to distant cousins. "I heard nothing until the scream," she insisted, her hands steady but her eyes haunted. Mr. Vance, his portfolio clutched like a shield, reported he was in the library, reviewing estate documents. "A tedious task," he said, "but necessary." His voice was flat, but Poirot detected a flicker of unease in his gaze. Miss Grey, pale as moonlight, stammered that she had been in the nursery, soothing Lady Beatrice's grandson to sleep. "He's a restless child," she said, her fingers tightening on her locket. Poirot's eyes lingered on the gesture, recalling the pearl earring. "And you heard nothing, mademoiselle? No footsteps, no cry?" She shook her head, her lips trembling. Dr. Caldwell, mopping his brow with a handkerchief, claimed he had been in the conservatory, nursing a headache with a glass of port. "I needed air," he said, his joviality a distant memory. Poirot noted a faint smudge of powder on his cuff, the kind a woman might wear. "You are most precise, doctor," Poirot said, his tone unreadable. Yet no one heard the approach of the killer. Most curious. As the interrogations concluded, Poirot retreated to a corner, his mind a whirl of details. The letter opener, the earring, the undisturbed velvet, the alibis that rang hollow. He summoned Captain Hastings, who had arrived earlier that day, at Poirot's request. "Hastings, mon ami," he said, his voice low. "This household is a nest of secrets. Each person hides something, fear, guilt, or perhaps the truth. The earring, it belongs to someone here, I am certain. And the letter opener, it was not taken in haste, but chosen with purpose." Hastings, his honest face creased with concern, nodded. "But who, Poirot? They all seem shaken, but none confess." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Precisely, mon ami. The killer is among them, playing their part with skill. But they have made one mistake. The earring. It is a thread, and I shall pull it until the tapestry unravels." As the clock struck midnight, the fog outside thickened, cloaking Blackthorn Hall in silence. Poirot stood alone by the staircase, his gaze fixed on the blood-stained velvet. "Clara Wentworth," he murmured. "You saw something, knew something that made you dangerous. But what? And who?" The little grey cells, he knew, would find the answer. But the night held more secrets yet to be unveiled. Chapter 3. The hidden motives, the morning after Clara Wentworth's murder, dawned grey and sullen, the fog lingering over Blackthorn Hall like a mourner's veil. Hercule Poirot stood in the garden, his polished shoes damp from the dew-soaked grass, his cane planted firmly as he surveyed the manor's looming facade. The air carried the faint scent of roses, wilting in the autumn chill, and the distant clatter of breakfast preparations echoed from within. Poirot's mind, however, was far from the tranquillity of the scene. His little grey cells churned, piecing together the fragments of the previous night's tragedy. The pearl earring, the bloodied letter-opener, the alibis. Each was a note in a discordant symphony, and he was determined to find the melody. Captain Hastings joined him, his face drawn from a sleepless night. "Poirot, this place feels like a powder keg," he said, rubbing his hands against the cold. "Everyone's on edge, and no one's saying what they really think." Poirot's moustache curved slightly. "Exactement, mon ami. In a house of secrets, silence is the loudest confession. Come, we must observe the players in this drama over breakfast." The dining room was a study in strained civility. Lady Beatrice, regal despite her pallor, presided over the table, her silver teaspoon stirring her tea with mechanical precision. Reginald Ashford slouched in his chair, his eyes red-rimmed, a glass of orange juice untouched before him. Miss Eleanor Gray, her delicate features pinched, cut her toast into precise squares, eating little. Mr. Harold Vance, his spectacles glinting in the morning light, sipped coffee, his portfolio never far from his hand. Dr. Simon Caldwell, attempting to restore his usual bonhomie, made a weak jest about the weather, but it fell flat, met with tight smiles. Poirot, seated opposite Lady Beatrice, sipped his café au lait, his eyes darting from face to face. The tension was palpable, a taut string waiting to snap. It was Reginald who broke the silence, his voice sharp with accusation. "Clara was always stirring trouble," he said, glaring at the table. "She wrote that blasted article about our business, hinting at scandals. Said she had proof I'd been reckless with money. Blackmail, that's what it was." His fist struck the table, rattling the china. Lady Beatrice's spoon paused mid-air. "Reginald, control yourself," she said, her tone icy, but her eyes betraying pain. "Clara was family, whatever her faults." Poirot noted the exchange, his mind seizing on Reginald's words. "Blackmail, Monsieur Ashford. A serious charge. What proof did Mademoiselle Wentworth claim to possess?" Reginald flushed, his bravado faltering. "She didn't say exactly. Just that she'd ruin me if I didn't pay up. Said she'd found something in the accounts." His gaze flicked to Mr. Vance, who stiffened, his thin lips compressing further. Poirot turned to the solicitor. "Monsieur Vance, you manage the Ashford estate. Did Mademoiselle Wentworth question you about these irregularities?" Vance adjusted his spectacles, his voice measured. "She was inquisitive, yes. Asked about investments, old transactions. I told her everything was in order, but she was persistent. A journalist's habit, I suppose." His tone was dismissive, but Poirot caught the slight twitch of his eyelid, a telltale sign of discomfort. Miss Gray, silent until now, spoke softly. "Clara was always asking questions. She came to the nursery once, asking about the family's history. I thought it odd." Her fingers toyed with the locket at her throat, a nervous tic Poirot had noted before. He leaned forward, his voice gentle but probing. "And what did you tell her, mademoiselle? Did she speak of secrets, perhaps, or betrayals?" Miss Gray's eyes widened, and she shook her head. Nothing specific, she just seemed curious about everyone. Poirot nodded, but his mind filed away her hesitation. Dr. Caldwell, wiping his brow with a napkin, added, Clara had a nose for trouble, always poking into things best left alone. No wonder someone. He trailed off, his face reddening as he realized his implication. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. No wonder indeed, Doctor. But who? That is the question. He excused himself, gesturing for Hastings to follow. In the privacy of the library, a vast room lined with leather-bound tomes and heavy drapes, Poirot paced, his cane tapping a thoughtful rhythm. Hastings? This family is a tapestry of motives. Reginald fears exposure of his debts. Vance guards the estate's secrets. Miss Grey hides something, perhaps fear, perhaps guilt. And Caldwell, his joviality is a mask. We must dig deeper. Hastings frowned. But where, Poirot? They all have alibis, flimsy as they are. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Alibis are like mirrors, mon ami. They reflect what one wishes to see. We must look behind them. Come, let us examine Mademoiselle Wentworth's quarters. Clara's room on the second floor was a study in contrasts to the manor's opulence. A simple bed, a writing desk cluttered with papers, and a wardrobe of modest dresses. Poirot's gaze fell on a small locked diary, its leather cover worn, but intact. With a hairpin borrowed from a maid and a deft touch, he opened it, revealing pages of Clara's sharp, slanting script. The entries were a journalist's notes, cryptic and tantalizing. The Ashford fortune is not what it seems, she wrote. Vance knows more than he admits. A secret buried in the ledgers. And another, a betrayal closer to home. One entry stood out. Must confront HV tonight. He cannot hide forever. Poirot's brow furrowed. HV, Harold Vance, sans doute. Clara was on the trail of something dangerous, but this betrayal, what does it mean? He found no other clues in the room, save a crumpled newspaper clipping of Clara's article, accusing the Ashford business of shady dealings. It was unsigned, but its tone was unmistakably hers. Returning downstairs, Poirot sought out Lady Beatrice in her study, a room of dark wood and heavy curtains, where a portrait of her late husband glowered from the wall. Madame, Poirot began, Clara's article threatened your family's reputation. Did you resent her for it? Lady Beatrice's eyes flashed, but her voice was steady. Clara was headstrong, yes, but I loved her. I begged her to stop digging into our affairs for her own sake. She wouldn't listen. Poirot noted the sincerity in her tone, but also the steel beneath it. And the pearl earring, madame. Do you recognize it? He produced the delicate item, watching her closely. Lady Beatrice frowned. It looks like Eleanor's, Miss Grey's. She wore such a pair yesterday. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The earring placed Miss Grey near the staircase, despite her claim of being in the nursery. Was she a witness, a victim of circumstance, or something more? As Poirot and Hastings left the study, a maid hurried past, her face pale. Sir, the inspector's asking for you. There's talk in the village. They say Clara wasn't the only one with enemies here. Poirot's moustache twitched. The village, it gossips, but gossip often hides a kernel of truth. Hastings, we must listen to these whispers and find the one who turned secrets into murder. The day wore on, the fog thickening outside, mirroring the mystery within Blackthorn Hall. Poirot knew the truth lay close, hidden in the interplay of fear and deceit, waiting for his little grey cells to uncover it. Chapter 4. The Second Tragedy. The storm descended upon Blackthorn Hall with a fury that matched the turmoil within its walls. Rain lashed the tall windows, and thunder rolled like a warning from the heavens, shaking the chandeliers. Hercule Poirot sat in the library, the glow of a single lamp illuminating Clara Wentworth's diary, its pages a labyrinth of cryptic accusations. The fire in the grate crackled, casting shadows that danced across the leather-bound books. But Poirot's focus was unwavering. The name H.V., Harold Vance, recurred in Clara's notes, alongside hints of a betrayal and a fortunate stake. His little grey cells hummed, sensing the threads of the mystery tightening. Captain Hastings, pacing near the window, glanced at Poirot. "This storm's making everyone jumpy, Poirot. The household's like a pot ready to boil over." Poirot nodded, closing the diary with a precise snap. "Oui, mon ami. And in such a storm, secrets are shaken loose. We must be vigilant." His words were cut short by a sharp, unmistakable sound. A gunshot, echoing through the manor like a crack in the fabric of the night. Poirot and Hastings raced toward the source, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpets. The conservatory, a glass-walled haven of ferns and orchids, was bathed in the eerie glow of lightning. There, slumped in a wicker chair, was Dr. Simon Caldwell, his head lolling to one side, a revolver dangling from his limp hand. A bullet wound marred his temple, blood trickling onto his starched collar. The air smelled of gunpowder and damp earth, the storm's roar barely drowning out the gasps of the household gathering at the door. Inspector Grayson pushed through, his face grim. "Suicide," he declared, eyeing the revolver. The man was overwrought, likely guilty over Miss Wentworth's death, couldn't live with it. He gestured to the scene as if it explained itself. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his moustache bristling with disapproval. "Non, Inspector, this is no suicide. It is murder, staged with cunning to deceive us." He knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers examining the revolver's position. The grip was awkward, the angle unnatural for a self-inflicted wound. A faint smudge of lipstick, a soft rose shade, marked Caldwell's collar, and Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Curieux," he murmured, "a woman's touch, perhaps." He rose, scanning the conservatory. A small fireplace smouldered in the corner, its embers glowing faintly. Among the ashes, Poirot spotted fragments of burnt paper. With a pair of tongs, he retrieved them, piecing together charred scraps. The words were faint but legible. Midnight, truth, will. Poirot's mind raced. "A meeting at midnight," he said to Hastings, "and a mention of a will." Dr. Caldwell knew something, and it cost him his life. The household, now crowded in the doorway, was a tableau of shock and fear. Lady Beatrice, supported by a maid, clutched her shawl, her face ashen. "Simon, oh, how much more must we endure?" she whispered. Reginald, his earlier bravado replaced by a haunted look, muttered, "This place is cursed. All that money, and it brings nothing but death." Miss Eleanor Gray, her eyes wide, with terror, clung to the doorframe, her locket glinting in the flickering light. Mr. Harold Vance stood apart, his expression unreadable, though his hands gripped his portfolio with white-knuckled intensity. Poirot addressed them, his voice calm but commanding. "Mes amis, we are in the presence of a second murder, not a suicide." Dr. Caldwell was silenced because he knew too much. Perhaps about Mademoiselle Wentworth's death, perhaps about something deeper. "I urge you to speak now, before the killer strikes again." His words hung in the air, met with silence, broken only by the storm's relentless drumming. Inspector Grayson, bristling at Poirot's contradiction, ordered the body removed and the conservatory sealed. Poirot, undeterred, continued his examination. Near the chair, a glass of port lay spilled, its contents staining the flagstone floor. A faint scent of bitter almonds lingered, suggesting more than alcohol. A sedative, perhaps, Poirot mused, to ensure the doctor was compliant. He noted a single muddy footprint near the glass door to the garden, too small for Caldwell's boots and partially smeared, as if deliberately obscured. Returning to the drawing-room, where the household awaited, Poirot questioned Miss Gray. Her nervous demeanour had intensified, her fingers twisting the locket until the chain threatened to snap. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said gently, "you were fond of Dr. Caldwell, were you not? I observe the lipstick on his collar matches the shade you wear." Miss Gray flushed, her voice trembling. "We were friends, nothing more. I was in the nursery all evening with the child." Poirot nodded, but his eyes held hers. "And yet, your earring was found on the staircase where Clara died. You must be more forthcoming, mademoiselle." Reginald, overhearing, scoffed. "She's not the only one with secrets. Caldwell was always sniffing around, playing the jolly friend while eyeing the family silver." His accusation drew a sharp rebuke from Lady Beatrice. "Enough, Reginald. Simon was loyal to us." Poirot noted the defensiveness in her tone, a hint of protectiveness that intrigued him. Mr. Vance, silent until now, spoke up. "Dr. Caldwell was troubled lately. He mentioned concerns about the estate, but I thought it was just his nerves." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And what concerns, Monsieur Vance? Did they involve the irregularities Clara uncovered?" Vance's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence louder than words. As the storm raged on, Poirot retreated to the library with Hastings. The burned fragments of the letter spread before them. "This letter," Poirot said, "suggests Dr. Caldwell arranged a meeting, perhaps to reveal what he knew about the will or Clara's murder. The killer acted swiftly to silence him, staging a suicide to divert suspicion." Hastings frowned. "But who, Poirot? Everyone's alibi is shaky, and now we've got two bodies." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The killer is clever, Hastings, but not flawless. The lipstick, the footprint, the burned letter, these are mistakes. And the will, I suspect it holds the key. We must find it, and we must watch Miss Grey closely. Her fear is genuine, but is it for herself or another?" He tapped his cane against the floor, his mind a whirl of connections. As midnight approached, the household dispersed to their rooms, the storm's fury unabated. Poirot lingered in the conservatory, his lantern casting long shadows among the ferns. The muddy footprint gnawed at him. A clue to the killer's movements, perhaps their identity. "The truth," he whispered to the empty room, "is hidden in the details, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall uncover it, no matter how deeply it is buried." The night stretched on, the storm a fitting chorus to the darkness enveloping Blackthorn Hall, where death had struck twice, and the shadow of a third loomed ever closer. Chapter 5. The Earring's Tale. The storm had subsided by morning, leaving Blackthorn Hall cloaked in a damp, uneasy calm. The sky was a sullen grey, mirroring the mood within the manor's walls. Hercule Poirot stood by the conservatory's glass doors, his sharp eyes tracing the now faint outline of the muddy footprint he had noted the previous night. The air carried the scent of wet earth and fading orchids, but Poirot's mind was elsewhere, weaving together the threads of two murders: Clara Wentworth's stabbing on the velvet stairs, and Dr. Simon Caldwell's staged suicide. The pearl earring, the burned letter, the smudged footprint, each was a piece of the puzzle, and Poirot was determined to see the whole picture. Captain Hastings, rubbing sleep from his eyes, joined him. "Poirot, this place is starting to feel like a mausoleum. 2 deaths in 2 days. What's next?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his gaze unwavering. "Next, mon ami, we pull the thread that unravels the truth. The earring, I believe, is that thread. Come, we must speak with Mademoiselle Grey." In the morning room, where weak sunlight filtered through heavy drapes, the household gathered for a subdued breakfast. Lady Beatrice, her face etched with grief, sipped tea with mechanical precision. Reginald Ashford, nursing a headache, pushed his plate away, his eyes darting suspiciously. Mr. Harold Vance, ever the stoic solicitor, reviewed papers, his pen scratching with deliberate calm. Miss Eleanor Grey, pale as the porcelain teacup she held, avoided Poirot's gaze, her fingers once again fidgeting with her locket. Poirot, sipping his café au lait, addressed her directly, his voice soft but piercing. "Mademoiselle Grey, I must ask you about this." He produced the pearl earring, holding it delicately between gloved fingers. It was found at the top of the staircase, where Mademoiselle Wentworth met her end. You wore its twin yesterday, did you not? The room stilled. All eyes on the governess. Dordeha cheeks flushed, and her locket slipped from her grasp, clattering to the table. I lost it days ago, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. It must have fallen off. I was in the nursery that night, with Master Thomas. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his tone unrelenting yet polite. And yet, mademoiselle, the carpet held it fast, as if dropped in haste. You were not near the staircase, you say? Then how did it come to be there? Miss Grey's lips trembled, but she offered no answer, her gaze fixed on the tablecloth. Lady Beatrice intervened, her voice sharp. Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't suspect Eleanor? She's devoted to my grandson. Poirot inclined his head. I suspect no one, madame, and everyone. The truth does not discriminate. His words hung in the air, a quiet challenge to the room's uneasy silence. Leaving the breakfast table, Poirot and Hastings ascended to the nursery, a bright room filled with toys and the faint scent of lavender. Miss Grey's belongings were neatly arranged. A sewing kit, a few books, a modest wardrobe. Poirot, with the precision of a watchmaker, examined the kit, his fingers pausing on a small photograph tucked beneath a spool of thread. It showed Miss Grey and Dr. Caldwell, standing close in a garden, her smile radiant, his hand resting on her arm. Aha, Poirot said softly. A connection more intimate than friendship, perhaps? Hastings frowned. You think they were involved, Poirot? And Clara found out. Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. It is possible, mon ami. Clara, with her journalist's nose, may have uncovered their liaison. Such a secret could ruin Miss Grey's position, or Caldwell's reputation. A motive, non? He replaced the photograph, his mind cataloguing the implications. Next, Poirot sought out Mr. Vance in the library, where the solicitor was sorting ledgers with meticulous care. Monsieur Vance, Poirot began, his tone deceptively casual. Mademoiselle Wentworth's diary suggests you knew of irregularities in the Ashford estate. She wrote of confronting you. What did she discover? Vance's hand froze mid-page, his spectacles catching the light. She was mistaken, he said curtly. Her accusations were baseless, the product of an overzealous imagination. I told her the accounts were sound. Poirot's smile was thin, yet her diary speaks of a secret buried in the ledgers. You are a man of numbers, monsieur. Numbers do not lie, but men may hide them. Vance's jaw tightened, but he offered no further defense. His silence, a wall Poirot vowed to breach. That afternoon, Poirot gathered the household in the drawing-room, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and fading roses. He held up the burned fragments of the letter found in the conservatory. This, he announced, was written by Dr. Caldwell. It speaks of a meeting at midnight, of a truth about a will. I believe he intended to meet Clara, Wentworth, perhaps to warn her, or to confront her. Someone ensured that meeting never took place. His gaze swept the room, noting Reginald's scowl, Miss Grey's trembling hands, and Vance's rigid posture. Lady Beatrice's voice broke the tension. A will? My will is no secret. Reginald inherits the estate, as is proper. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Is it, madame? Or is there another document, one Clara discovered, that changes the game? His words sparked a flicker of unease in her eyes, quickly masked. As the household dispersed, Poirot confided in Hastings. The earring places Miss Grey near the crime, yet her fear suggests she is not the killer, but a witness perhaps, or a pawn. The letter points to the will, and Vance's reticence confirms Clara's suspicions of financial deceit. We must find this will, Hastings, and we must watch them all. He tapped his cane, his mind racing. The killer is clever, but they have left traces. The earring, the footprint, the letter. Each is a breadcrumb leading to the truth. That evening, Poirot lingered in the hall, his lantern casting shadows on the velvet stairs. The bloodstain had been cleaned, but the memory of Clara's death lingered. He retraced her fall, noting a faint scuff mark on the carpet, not from a shoe but from something dragged. A body, perhaps, moved to stage the scene. The killer, he murmured, wished to suggest an accident, but they betrayed themselves with this mark. As the clock chimed 10, a maid approached, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, I overheard something in the servants' hall. They say Dr. Caldwell was seen arguing with someone in the garden yesterday, before the storm. A woman, they think." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A woman, you say? Most interesting. Merci, mademoiselle." He turned to Hastings, his voice low. "The net tightens, mon ami. Tomorrow we shall cast it wider, and see who is caught." The night settled over Blackthorn Hall, the silence heavy with unspoken truths. Poirot knew the killer was among them, their mask of innocence slipping with every clue he uncovered. The earring's tale was not yet complete, but it was leading him closer to the heart of the mystery. Chapter 6. The Will and the Secret. The morning light filtered weakly through the tall windows of Blackthorn Hall, casting long shadows across the polished floors. The air was heavy with the scent of wax and old roses, a faint reminder of the manor's elegance now marred by death. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, a room of dark panelling and heavy velvet curtains, where a portrait of the late Lord Ashford gazed down with stern disapproval. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the edge of a mahogany desk, his mind a whirl of connections. Clara Wentworth's diary, the pearl earring, the burned letter, and the muddy footprint. 2 murders had shaken the household, and the truth, Poirot knew, was tantalizingly close. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, hovered nearby, his brow furrowed. "Poirot, this case is like a maze. Every clue seems to lead to another dead end. Where do we go from here?" Poirot's moustache curved into a faint smile. "Not a maze, mon ami, but a tapestry woven with care. We must find the loose thread, the will. It is the key to Clara's death, and perhaps to Dr. Caldwell's." He turned to the desk, his eyes alighting on a small, ornate keyhole in its side, barely noticeable beneath the stack of papers. Poirot had requested a private audience with Lady Beatrice, who entered the study with the grace of a woman accustomed to command, though her eyes betrayed exhaustion. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but strained, "you spoke of a will yesterday. I assure you, my wishes are clear. Reginald inherits the estate." Poirot inclined his head, his tone courteous but probing. "Madame, I believe there is another document, one Clara discovered, a will that perhaps altered the future of the Ashford fortune. May I examine your safe?" Lady Beatrice hesitated, her fingers tightening on her lace handkerchief. "There is nothing to find," she said, but her voice faltered. Poirot's gaze held hers, unyielding yet polite. "Madam, 2 people are dead. The truth cannot be locked away." With a reluctant nod, she produced a key from a chain at her waist and opened a concealed panel behind the portrait. The safe, small but sturdy, yielded to her touch, revealing a bundle of documents. Among them was a will, older than the current one, its parchment yellowed but intact. Poirot's eyes scanned the text, his breath catching. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "this leaves the bulk of the estate to Clara Wentworth, not Reginald. A significant change, no?" Lady Beatrice's face paled. "It was drafted years ago, when Clara was a child, before her reckless pursuits. I revised it to protect the family's legacy." Poirot nodded, but his mind noted her defensiveness. "And Clara knew of this, madame. Did she threaten to expose it?" Lady Beatrice's lips trembled. "She came to me, yes, accusing me of betraying her. I told her it was for the good of the family. She wouldn't listen." Her voice broke, and Poirot's heart softened, but his little grey cells remained relentless. "A motive, perhaps," he said softly, "for someone to silence her." Leaving the study, Poirot sought out Dr. Caldwell's belongings stored in a guest room. His medical bag, a worn leather satchel, contained the usual tools: stethoscope, bandages, vials of medicine. One vial, half empty, caught Poirot's eye. A sedative, its label smudged but legible. A faint trace of rose-coloured lipstick marked its rim, matching the smudge on Caldwell's collar. "Aha!" Poirot said to Hastings, who watched with growing intrigue. "The killer used this to subdue the doctor, then staged the suicide. But the lipstick, it points to a woman, or someone clever enough to make us think so." Poirot next confronted Miss Eleanor Gray, finding her in the nursery, reading to young Master Thomas. The child's laughter contrasted sharply with her strained expression. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, producing the photograph from her sewing kit. "You and Dr. Caldwell were close, were you not? Clara discovered this, and it threatened your position here." Miss Gray's eyes filled with tears, her voice a whisper. "We loved each other, yes, but it was secret. Clara found out. She saw us in the garden. She said she'd tell Lady Beatrice, ruin us both. I begged her not to, but I didn't kill her." Her anguish was genuine, but Poirot noted her careful omission of the night of Caldwell's death. Hastings, puzzled, whispered, "Poirot, she's terrified, but is she guilty?" Poirot shook his head. "Her fear is real, but I suspect she is a pawn, not the player. The killer uses her secrets to obscure their own." He returned to the grand staircase, his lantern illuminating the crimson velvet. The scuff mark he had noted before, a faint drag mark not from a shoe, nagged at him. Clara was moved, he told Hastings. The killer stabbed her elsewhere, then placed her at the stairs to suggest a fall. But this mark betrays them. It is too deliberate for an accident. In the drawing room, Poirot gathered his thoughts, the household's faces flashing through his mind. Reginald's desperation to protect his inheritance, Vance's guarded silence, Miss Gray's secret affair, Lady Beatrice's revised will. Each was a motive, but none yet fit the puzzle perfectly. The maid's gossip about Caldwell's argument in the garden gnawed at him. A woman, he mused. Miss Gray, perhaps, or another. We must learn more. He sought out the maid, a nervous girl named Mary, who confirmed the rumour. "I saw Dr. Caldwell in the garden before the storm, sir, arguing with a lady. Couldn't see her face, but she had a shawl, dark-like." Poirot's mind flashed to Lady Beatrice's lace shawl, but also to Miss Gray's nervous demeanour. "Merci, Mary," he said, his thoughts racing. "You have given me a piece of the puzzle." As evening fell, Poirot stood alone in the conservatory, the scene of Caldwell's murder. The glass walls reflected his silhouette, a solitary figure amidst the ferns. The muddy footprint, now cleaned, lingered in his memory, a clue to the killer's movements, perhaps their identity. "The will," he murmured, "changes everything. Clara's inheritance threatened someone's future, and Caldwell's knowledge sealed his fate. But who? And why the lipstick, the earring, the staged scenes?" He turned to Hastings, who had followed silently. "Tomorrow, mon ami, we gather them all. The killer believes they have outwitted Hercule Poirot, but they have left too many traces. The will, the sedative, the garden argument, these are the keys to their undoing." His eyes gleamed with certainty. The storm within Blackthorn Hall nearing its climax. The night deepened, the manor silent save for the creak of settling wood. Poirot knew the truth was within reach, hidden in the shadows of secrets and lies, waiting for his relentless logic to bring it to light. Chapter 7. The Unveiling. The drawing-room of Blackthorn Hall was a stage set for revelation. Its heavy brocade curtains drawn against the pale afternoon light, the air thick with the scent of beeswax and unspoken dread. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his compact figure commanding despite its diminutive stature, his moustache impeccably groomed, his eyes alight with the fire of certainty. The household gathered before him. Lady Beatrice Ashford, her silver hair a crown of authority now shadowed by grief. Reginald Ashford, his charm eroded by suspicion and drink. Miss Eleanor Gray, her delicate hands clasped tightly, her eyes haunted, and Mr. Harold Vance, his solicitor's composure a brittle mask. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, his honest face taut with anticipation, while Inspector Grayson, arms crossed, watched with grudging respect. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, "we stand in the wake of two tragedies, the murder of Clara Wentworth, stabbed on the velvet stairs, and the murder of Dr. Simon Caldwell, staged as a suicide in the conservatory. These crimes are not random, but woven together by greed, betrayal, and a cunning hand. Today I, Hercule Poirot, shall reveal the one who wove this deadly tapestry." He paced slowly, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm. "Let us begin with Clara Wentworth. She was a journalist, relentless in her pursuit of truth. Her diary revealed two secrets: financial irregularities in the Ashford estate and a betrayal within the family. She confronted someone. HV, she wrote, meaning Harold Vance. Poirot's gaze fixed on the solicitor, whose spectacles glinted as he shifted uncomfortably. "Clara discovered you had been embezzling from the estate, Monsieur Vance, siphoning funds for years. Her article threatened to expose you, did it not?" Vance's lips thinned, but he shook his head. "Preposterous. She had no proof." Poirot raised a hand. "Yet her diary says otherwise. She was to confront you the night she died. You knew her inheritance, revealed in the older will, would cut you off from the fortune you plundered. So you acted." Poirot turned to the household, producing the pearl earring. "This was found at the top of the staircase, where Clara fell. It belongs to Mademoiselle Gray." Miss Gray gasped, her locket slipping from her fingers. "I told you, I lost it." Poirot nodded. "Oui, mademoiselle, I believe you. But its presence was no accident. The killer placed it there to implicate you, knowing of your affair with Dr. Caldwell, a secret Clara had uncovered." He moved to the burned letter fragments, laid out on a table. Dr. Caldwell wrote of a midnight meeting, mentioning a will. I believe he intended to warn Clara of the danger, perhaps aware of Vance's theft. But you, Monsieur Vance, intercepted this letter. When Caldwell became a liability, you killed him, using a sedative from his own bag, laced with lipstick to cast suspicion on Mademoiselle Gray. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The lipstick, a clever touch, but the muddy footprint in the conservatory betrayed you. It was too small for Caldwell, too deliberate to be accidental. Reginald interrupted, his voice slurred with brandy. "What about me? Clara was blackmailing me over my debts." Poirot's smile was sharp. "Oui, monsieur, but your debts made you a victim, not a killer. You lacked the precision for these crimes." He turned to Lady Beatrice. "Madame, you changed the will to protect your son, but you did not kill. Your grief is genuine." Poirot faced Vance again. "You stabbed Clara in the study, using the family's letter opener to cast suspicion on all. You dragged her body to the stairs, staging a fall, but the scuff mark betrayed you. Then you killed Caldwell, framing it as suicide to silence his suspicions. The earring, the lipstick, the burned letter, these were your misdirection, but they were also your mistakes." Vance's composure cracked, his face contorting. "You have no proof!" he shouted, but his voice trembled. Poirot produced the older will and Clara's diary. "These, combined with the footprint and the sedative, tell the story. You stole from the Ashfords, and when Clara threatened to expose you, you killed her. When Caldwell grew too close to the truth, you silenced him. Vance lunged forward, but Inspector Grayson seized him, his confession spilling forth in a torrent of rage and fear. She would have ruined me, and Caldwell, he wouldn't stop asking questions." The room fell silent, the weight of truth settling like dust. Lady Beatrice wept softly. Miss Gray buried her face in her hands, and Reginald stared into his glass, stunned. Poirot's voice softened. The human heart, it seeks to protect itself, but in doing so, it weaves its own undoing. As Grayson led Vance away, Poirot turned to Hastings. Mon ami, the little grey cells have triumphed, but at what cost? 2 lives lost, a family broken. The storm had passed, but the scars of Blackthorn Hall would linger, etched in blood on the velvet stairs. Chapter 8. The Aftermath. The fog that had clung to Blackthorn Hall for days began to lift, revealing a pale, hesitant dawn. The manor, once vibrant with the clink of crystal and the murmur of secrets, stood silent, its grandeur dimmed by the weight of tragedy. Hercule Poirot stood at the foot of the grand staircase, his polished shoes gleaming against the polished oak, his eyes lingering on the crimson velvet, now free of blood, but forever marked by memory. The case was solved. The killer, Mr. Harold Vance, confessed and taken away by Inspector Grayson, yet a sombre air lingered, as if the house itself mourned the lives lost and the truths exposed. Captain Hastings joined Poirot, his face etched with the weariness of the past days. It's over, Poirot, he said, his voice low, but it doesn't feel like a victory. 2 people dead, and the family in pieces. Poirot's moustache twitched, his gaze softening. Mon ami, the truth is a surgeon's knife. It cuts to heal, but the wound remains. We have done what we must, but the heart, it carries its own scars. In the drawing room, Lady Beatrice Ashford sat alone, her silver hair catching the morning light, her hands folded in her lap. She rose as Poirot entered, her expression a blend of gratitude and sorrow. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her eyes, you have saved us from further ruin. Yet I cannot help but feel I failed them, Clara, Simon, even Harold. I trusted too blindly. Poirot inclined his head, his tone gentle. Non, madame. Trust is not a failure, but a strength misused by others. You loved your family, and that is no crime. She nodded, her gaze distant. Clara was headstrong, but brilliant. I changed the will to protect Reginald, thinking it would secure our legacy. Instead, it sparked this horror. Poirot placed a hand on hers, a rare gesture. The past cannot be undone, madame, but the future, it is yours to shape. Miss Eleanor Gray, her delicate features drawn, entered to announce her resignation. I cannot stay, she said, her voice breaking. Not after Simon, not after all this. Her locket, once a nervous tick, hung still, a symbol of a love lost to secrecy and death. Poirot regarded her with compassion. Mademoiselle, you are caught in a web not of your making. Go and find peace. She nodded, tears spilling, and left to pack her belongings, her footsteps echoing in the silent hall. Reginald Ashford, sobered by the ordeal, lingered in the billiard room, his usual bravado replaced by a quiet resolve. Poirot found him there, staring at a cue as if it held answers. Monsieur Reginald, Poirot said, you have been given a chance to redeem yourself. The estate is yours, but so is the responsibility. Reginald met his gaze, his voice raw. I've been a fool, Poirot. Clara's death, Caldwell's, it's woken me up. I'll make things right for mother's sake. Poirot nodded, sensing a flicker of sincerity in the young man's words. Inspector Grayson, preparing to depart, approached Poirot with a grudging nod. You were right, Mr. Poirot. Vance fooled us all, but not you. How'd you know? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The little grey cells, Inspector. They see what others miss. The earring, the footprint, the will, these were not accidents, but signatures of guilt. Grayson tipped his hat, a rare gesture of respect, and left to escort Vance to London. As Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, the manor's butler handed them their coats, his flinty eyes softened by relief. The hansom cab waited outside, its horse stamping in the crisp air. Poirot paused at the threshold, glancing back at the staircase. Hastings, he said softly, this house, it is like the human heart, beautiful, yet capable of hiding great darkness. We have brought light, but the shadows remain." They stepped into the cab, the manor receding into the mist as they drove toward London. Hastings, ever the optimist, ventured, "At least it's over, Poirot. The truth's out." Poirot's smile was wistful. "Oui, mon ami. But the truth is a guest who lingers. The Ashfords will carry this tale long after we are gone." The cab rattled on, the fog parting to reveal the city's skyline. Poirot's mind, though satisfied, was already alert for the next puzzle, the next drama of the human soul. For now, Blackthorn Hall faded into memory, its velvet stairs stained not with blood, but with the indelible mark of betrayal and redemption.